Steli Efti, he is the founder and CEO of Close. Was close.io, now they are close.com, and we're looking forward to hearing from him. And his thoughts on selling in a crisis. And I think it's quite clear that the ability, there he is. Why do I need to? I don't need to say anything more.
I was enjoying this. I was like, oh, Danny's giving a great intro.
Right. How are you, and where are you joining us from?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. And I'm joining from Germany, actually.
Okay.
So I live in mostly in New York. I go back and forth between New York and Germany because my family's here. But since COVID, I decided early enough in February that it probably would be a good idea to be in Germany, close to family. And so here's where I'm like locked in inside, working through this whole pandemic.
Well, we're all doing that together. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I'll let you take this away. He's the founder and CEO of Close. He is Steli Efti. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danny. All right, so I'm going to be talking about selling remotely during a pandemic, or selling during a pandemic in general. So I'm going to share a couple of thoughts over the next 20 minutes, tactics, a mindset, things I've seen that work and that don't work, and then we're going to go into the Q&A, which is the thing that I'm most interested in. I want to start with two things, though, to create the proper context. Well, number one, maybe you want to write down my email address, steli@close.com, STELI @close, like closing a deal.com. If you send me an email anytime, today, tomorrow, anytime with the subject line, Selling Crisis Toolkit, I'm going to send you a bunch of information and resources that we put together to help people and companies that are selling and want to successfully sell through this pandemic and during this pandemic. So, and also to keep you sane, I'm going to be bringing up a lot of ideas on a lot of tactics and things to keep in mind. So I don't want to create any more anxiety where you have to write down everything and think, oh my God, if I don't write down any kind of tip, it's going to be gone forever. If you send me an email, steli@close.com, Selling Crisis Kit, I'm going to send you a bunch of kind of virtual documents and resources that encapsulate kind of all the things that I'm going to be talking about today. All right, so a few words about myself, and then we're going to jump into tactics, strategies, mindset, things that you should keep in mind as you're wondering and as you are attempting to sell through the crisis, right? So a little bit about myself first. Name is Steli Efti. I'm originally from Greece, born and raised in Germany. And then in 2007, I moved to Silicon Valley. And I've been living in the Bay Area for 13 years. And then since last year in New York, I've been, if there's any kind of entrepreneurial superpower that I've ever possessed, it's definitely been sales. And to me, selling at its core is really result-driven communications, communicating with a conversion as the end goal. And so I've built many sales teams myself. I've sold a ton in all kinds of different environments and contexts. And most notably and most relevant for all of you, I'm running a company today that's called Close. We sell sales productivity software, a CRM that a lot of remote sales teams all around the world are using to communicate, to send emails, to make calls, to close deals, to track their pipeline, to follow up and follow through with people. And so, we are a company that is fully remote ourselves and have been for over 5 years now. We're 45 people in, I think, 15 different countries. And primarily we sell to sales teams and to technology companies and to remote companies. And I've been talking to founders and sales leaders and sales reps almost nonstop in the past, in the past 2-3 months, trying to give advice on how to navigate during this crisis, and also learning what is working for others, what isn't working, and trying to share as much of that knowledge as possible. And that's why I'm here today with all of you. So I'm going to share just a couple of things to keep in mind as you're wondering, how do we successfully sell during a crisis, during a pandemic like this? And before I jump into that, last disclaimer, I think you all know this, but take everything I say with a big grain of salt, because I don't know. Nobody knows, right? Nobody has ever gone through this. The advice that I'll give, the tactics that I'll share are things we're doing successfully and things that I've seen other people do successfully or unsuccessfully. But anything that I tell you that's working for us today might stop working in a couple of weeks, as the world is spinning quite fast these days. And as things are changing at an unprecedented rate, you're going to have to keep a beginner's mind every single day, every single week. You can assume that the things that are working today will continue to work. We're going to have to stay even more agile and even more on our toes, learning, adjusting, and changing and adapting to a new world as the world is changing. All right, a couple of things to keep in mind when it comes to selling during a pandemic. Number one, and this is truly something I believe in, which is, I always believe that whoever understands the customer best ultimately wins and owns and earns their business. But during an insane time like this, it's even more important than ever before for you to have customer intimacy, for you to be as close to your customers as possible and truly understand what they're going through, what their psyche is, what their world and their reality looks like. Because the better you're going to understand them, the more you truly understand what they're going through and what's going on in their world, the better you, A, are going to be able to serve them, B, are going to be able to sell to them, and C, you're going to be able to adjust ahead of the curve, right? Because what your customers and prospects are going to be telling you is going to be changing quite drastically. And so if you keep very close contact, if you keep communicating and over-communicating with your prospects, your market, your customers, and if you practice active listening, you're going to be able to hear what they're telling you, what the patterns are, and also have a real understanding of when the sentiment is changing. Maybe now your prospects, your market, they're all telling you business is booming, we're not concerned, we're willing to buy, we're willing to purchase. And all of a sudden you start hearing how the sentiment is changing. Or for many, it might be the other way around. Today, they're all telling you they don't want to buy, they can't buy, they're scared, they're nervous. But if you keep communicating, maybe a week from now, you're going to start seeing that the sentiment is shifting and it's softening. And some of the prospects in your space think, you know what? I think we're willing to buy now. We're willing to invest in things. And so you're going to be able to keep a close eye and a real sense for what the trends are in the market. And the biggest problem that I see sales teams having right now when it comes to how to sell in the pandemic is really themselves, their own psyche, their own insecurities and fears. I've done, I think, 5 to 6 webinars with all kinds of different groups, webinars exclusive to Y Combinator startups, webinars that was exclusive to our customer base, all kinds of webinars where all kinds of founders came from around the world and sales reps. And the number one question that all of them have can be summarized to this: how can we keep selling without upsetting our customers and our prospects? How can, in this world, how can I call somebody? How can I email somebody without coming across as insensitive, without coming across as sleazy, without upsetting people? Sales teams and businesses, we all have real anxieties around not upsetting people and not coming across tone deaf or coming across insensitive during these times. So we feel insecure about selling. We feel insecure about trying to close a deal and get some money, right? And I get it. There's a real humanity behind that anxiety that I respect, but it is misguided. At the end of the day, all of us collectively putting our heads in the sand and stop sending emails, stop making calls, stop trying to do business and to create value is not helping anybody. It truly isn't. It's not doing anything. It's not making anything better. It's making everything worse. And what's even worse than that is when we stop doing certain things because we assume, it's our imagination, it's our hypothesis, but we never test it. I had one company that was selling to schools, and they just stopped selling because they thought, well, schools are closing. Obviously, it makes no sense sending emails or making calls to schools, right? Nobody's there. When they talked to me, I'd asked, hey, did you test that hypothesis? Did you call or send an email to the admin, to the back office of the school, to the principal, to whoever to the IT department, to whoever your typical buyer was? Did you keep communicating to see if maybe people still pick up the phone? And they told me no. And then a couple of days later, they did. And they were amazed that they were reaching people. Not everybody, but they were reaching a bunch of people, because it turned out that for the type of schools they were selling to, the admin, the back office, the IT department, people were still reading their emails. Some people were still at the school in the admin office working. They could still reach people. And you know what? They couldn't just reach people. People were willing to talk to them, right? People were willing to listen. And people were willing to trial new software. It was a wonderful thing. The schools were telling them, listen, the world is changing. We need to become more tech savvy. Maybe, and we have plenty of time. Maybe now is the time to evaluate some new software. So make sure that you don't just assume that your customer doesn't want to talk to you, your prospects, that they won't pick up, they won't respond. Communicate, test, and see what the response and the results are, and adjust accordingly. Of course, you're going to potentially encounter more negativity as a response during these times. In sales, you'll always have to deal with some level of negativity, some level of people being upset or irritated or unpleasant. That's just the world we live in. But during a pandemic, when anxieties are so insanely high, you're just going to have to deal with the fact that some people are going to leash out on you in ways that are unfair. I had somebody just recently that had asked us, this is a person that is not a customer prospect, trials our software, then sends an email and says, hey, can we get a special deal because of COVID-19? Our sales team, my sales team, is telling him, yes, here's a special deal that we're offering currently. Then he responds and says, no, I want more. I want you to give me basically a 95% discount, right? Almost give away the software for free. To which my sales team is responding, we get it, but we can't give you our product at this price. That's just not possible. To that, he then responds to me. He forwards that email to me and lashes out in all caps. This is impossible. This is unheard of. The world is ending. People are dying, and you cannot even give me a 95% discount. Can't even give me your shitty software, whatever, what $5 that I want? Are you insane? I'm gonna blog about this. I'm gonna destroy your reputation. Now, if you ask me, that person is quite unreasonable, right? You can't, just because there's a pandemic, you cannot force me to work for free for you or to give you all my things. Like, I don't owe you anything. I don't owe you my software. There's a price we can give you and we can't go below. And if that price doesn't work for you, go somewhere else. But what's the point in you screaming at me? I haven't done anything unethical or not correct just because I'm not bending to your will. But you have to understand, people are very emotional and people deal with their emotions differently. And this gentleman decided to deal with it in anger. This has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with my company or my team. And so I didn't take it personally. I just told him, I understand. I wish him best of luck. I hope that he stays safe and sane. And I kept it moving. And so you have to be okay with dealing with some kind of an overwhelming, sometimes maybe more negativity back than you usually get. That doesn't mean that you should stop selling and you should stop doing commerce. Some more tactical things that I want to share, things that we've seen work really, really well for us. So one thing, if you run a SaaS business, a subscription business, I don't believe that this is a good time to try to negotiate contracts, to get people into contracts. Because the truth is, a contract is a really useful construct in a stable world, in a stable economy, in a stable world, but environment. But in this level of, volatility and craziness, negotiating with a customer to sign a 1 year or 2 year or 3 year contract, if it's paid monthly, is a worthless exercise. I wouldn't do that anymore, because down the line, if they want to cancel, they're going to be able to cancel without any problems, any repercussions from you, because they can tell you either that they're going to go out of business, so they're canceling, there's nothing you can do about it, or they're going to tell you that if they can't cancel, they're going to have to go out of business. One way or another, during an economic collapse, you're not going to be able to keep people to paying you just because there's a contract in place. So forget about that. But what you should do, what you should overly emphasize are prepays. This is something we've seen tremendous success with over the past couple of months, is pushing aggressively to our customers special deals if they prepay for a whole year versus if they just pay us monthly. And honestly, when we started with this, I was not sure if anybody would take us up on that offer. And I'm still to some degree amazed every single day that a lot of customers are taking us up on that offer. The last month was our company record in prepays. Every single day. And there's a lot of prepays that also happen self-serve. People sign up, they have 4 or 5 users, and on day one, they decide to pay us $4K, $5K for the entire year versus paying monthly. Now, that's counterintuitive to me. I would believe that every business in the world would protect their cash flow and in uncertain times would just rather pay month to month. But that's not true. And in general, the simplified pitch during these times, if somebody asks you, why should I buy right now when there's so much uncertainty, there's a very simple basic math that you can offer. You can tell them, if you want to buy today in a very uncertain world, you're going to get a very special price. We're going to give you a great deal. Now, if you want to wait till the world is stable, till things are good and stabilized, that's fine as well. But then you're going to have to pay a higher price, the price that everybody else is going to pay. So you take a risk today, you get the reward of a better price. You wait till there's no more risk, that's totally fine and rational too. You get a higher price, you get less of a deal. That's a very simple equation. And I'm telling you, every single day, companies are still buying, people are still purchasing, lots of them. So don't be shy of offering that. Don't be shy for asking for prepays. You'd be surprised. We are surprised every single day. And it's been a brilliant strategy for us. It really has made the future of our business much more stable because our cash flow situation has been improving every single day because we've overemphasized on cash. Cash is king versus signing these bigger contracts that are paid monthly that have inherently in them during a crisis and pandemic a higher level of uncertainty and instability in them. The last thing I'll say before we go into Q&A and I answer your questions, and again, a reminder, steli@close.com, Selling Crisis Toolkit. I'm going to give you a bunch of PDFs, ebooks, resources, templates for you to be able to sell successfully during this time. So for some of you, you're not going to be able to close the deal right now. I understand that. For some of you, you're selling to certain departments and the people in those departments are telling you all budgets are frozen. Frozen. There's nothing we can do about it. You cannot get any penny. I cannot wire you money. This business that I work for has frozen all budgets. I get that, right? In those cases, you can still progress the sale. You can still be productive in a sales context. What you might want to do is just ask yourself, if I think about the entire selling process, the entire funnel, what are all the steps it takes before somebody wires money? And what are the immediate steps after wiring the money? And how can we maybe retool and re-engineer the sales process so we can progress as many deals as possible and fill our pipeline so by the time budgets get unfrozen, we can convert as many customers as possible. Maybe now is a really good time to run the pilot. You make that upfront investment. You tell them, let's run the pilot. You have time, you have space, it doesn't require any money. Let's upgrade, let's kind of implement the software. Let's customize it for you. Let's teach you and train you how to use our software. Let's run a pilot and look at what kind of data and what kind of benefits we could have. Let's go through legal. Let's do all the steps. Let us go through in the procurement department. Let us do all the steps, everything up to the point where you sign the contract and wires the money. So by the time the budget is unfrozen, if at that point you're convinced, yes, this software is awesome, we're going to benefit tremendously from it, or this product, we want to purchase it, then there's no more work to be done other than just wiring the money, signing the contract. So think of creative ways to keep putting prospects through your pipeline, filling your funnel so you can be productive. So when budgets unfreeze again, you have business to do, and you don't have to then start building a pipeline and start running pilots and start customizing and demoing software and going through all these steps. So by the time budgets are unfrozen, it takes you another 3, 4, 5 months before you start generating money. Think about creative ways to change the way you sell and the way you do the step-by-step selling, so you can be productive, and your prospect and customers can do productive things during this pandemic, so that when things resume to a little bit more normalcy, commerce can happen, business can happen, money can be exchanged, and value can be exchanged. All right, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I know now we're getting into the Q&A space of it, but I have no idea how this works. Not sure if Emma is going to appear here. Oh, Danny. Boom, Danny is appearing.
We're both here.
And
Teamwork.
I'm here too, Steli.
Beautiful.
Teamwork.
Yeah.
Emma, I am just like blown away here. That was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Steli, that was incredible. Seriously.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think we have, companies almost have like an economic responsibility to sell, to keep commerce moving, right? Like we can't just shut everything down. And that's why we're working remotely, is so that we maintain progress.
Who would it help? Think about it. If I sell, it helps myself, my family. It helps the business and all the people that work for my company and their families. It hopefully helps the customers if we sell something of value. It is hard to sell during this time, but there's a lot of value in it. There's no value in just stopping what you do all day and not pinging anybody.
Yeah. So we're going to move straight into the Q&A. Thanks again, Steli. So
I've got a question. I'm going to ask you a question. Okay. We talked about this a lot with CTO and co-founder of Monday, Aran, before. Why don't you break down your like personal working at home situation right now, right? Like how are you managing your distractions? How are you managing, I'm like you, I live in Spain, for example, but I'm home in California. I made a similar decision as you did. How are you managing being somewhere that you don't really live? Just talk about how that balance is playing out in your professional life. Yeah,
difficult. It's been a bumpy road for me, for sure. I think that the most important thing, the one thing that I did that helped me through this is just forgive myself every day. Just start the day with telling myself it's fine to suck today. Like today, as long as I'm still going through figuring out how to like adjust to this new reality, everybody else is, right? So I have 2 boys. I have an ex-wife and 2 boys that live in Germany. So I'm like, all right, so they're now at home. I'm now kind of close by, but I'm also working full time. How do we find a new rhythm? And then I have, a mother and brothers and all kinds of family members that I'm usually not as accessible to. Now I'm very accessible to. How do I help all these people? How do I keep sane and be productive? And so for the first 2 weeks, it was not easy. And I think the thing that made it easier a little bit is, telling myself it's okay. I can suck today. I'm just gonna make sure that I get the most important thing done. I don't have to be super productive, like I would be during a normal time, during my normal work environment. And then step by step, I kind of try to design a new life, a new day-to-day routine. When do I wake up? How do I work? Where do I work? When do I spend time with my family? How do I manage my days to be as productive as possible? And by now, I'm in a really good rhythm. Like now I'm doing really well. I have the benefit that although I have children and I see them every day, they are not here. Like I have a separate apartment as well. So that makes it easy, right? This is the office basically. And then I go over to their house and that's playtime and it's crazy. So I didn't have to do the cool hack with like the calendar, showing my kids my calendar and telling them when they're allowed to come in or not. But it took a while for me to figure it out, and I just had to accept that. And I think that acceptance helped me get through that faster, because in the past I would have been a lot more judgmental and harsher on myself, and all that would have done is create more stress, more anxiety, and make me even less productive and potentially take even more time to figure it out.
That is helpful that you do have kind of the office setting. Wow, what an amazing first question here. Steli, close is badass. How does a tiny team compete with massive companies like Salesforce and HubSpot? And I also want to remind everyone that close is, and I believe always has been, fully distributed.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, not always. When we first started the first year, we had an apartment that was an office, but most of the time people were traveling. Like we used to call ourselves semi-remote because there was a place, but most people weren't there. And then I think in year 2, we gave that up and we went fully remote. That question is truly awesome. I can't believe I didn't pay for this. So that's a great question. I mean, there's so many, it depends, and there's so much luck and timing and all kinds of things involved. But to simplify it in a way that's going to be useful to people that are listening, I think the number one thing that we did that allowed us to be the smallest team in our space and still be quite successful was hyper-focus. And it sounds easy, but it's actually quite uncomfortable. We, I think, are experts and have always been pretty good at saying no. We said no to so many things, especially in the early days. We said no to so many things in so many painful ways, in ways that it was not quite clear to us that it would work out. And I think that really helped us be hyper-focused. And then it helped us to be especially good in that one thing and develop a very strong point of view. And that ultimately is really what allowed us to exist even in this space. I think if we had started in the CRM space we were a 6-person team for the first 3 years, and we tried to do everything to everyone, do partnerships, do ecosystem, do this, that, we'd never been able to get any momentum going. So focus and being great at saying no were definitely our 2 superpowers that helped us with this.
I couldn't agree more, and it's been thanks for sharing that kind of insight on your. Would you change your sales delivery process or method? I think one of the concerns people have is about like doing outbound, right? Like, are you going to seem insensitive with outbound communications? Like, how are you changing your delivery methodology?
So I would only change my delivery method if my customer is changing the way they want to buy. Right? So I wouldn't just assume that it's going to be looked upon as insensitive if I cold call somebody. Maybe they're happy to have to talk to somebody. Maybe they're happy for some normalcy in their life. And I think that what matters, I think that people are sometimes stuck in like a black and white way of thinking about sales, where either we accept the reality that the people are hurting and this is a stressful time, and hence we should just shut up and not talk to anybody, or when we call we should just be very apologetic about it, or we're like this sleazy, out of touch, weirdly positive, hello, everything is great, when it's not, right? And there is a middle ground. There is a thing that's called being a real person but still having energy. I think that that's really what you should focus on. If you cold call somebody, don't be an asshole and be fake positive, but don't be whiny either. Be honest, be frank, be real, but have energy. I think that's something people appreciate even more so during these times than others. Talking to somebody that seems energetic, that maybe gives them a little bit of energy. Maybe the world isn't that bad of a place. Maybe things can be done. Because, think about how many people you talk to during these days that make you feel better. Not many, right? So if you can be the kind of person that talks to people and they feel a little bit more energized afterwards, that's a great thing to do. So you can cold call, cold email. Maybe that works. Maybe that works. Doesn't work anymore. I would let the market dictate that, not your thoughts and your assumptions on it. And some businesses are telling me that they can't do their normal outreach anymore. It doesn't work. And so now they have to experiment with other ways. They have to be more email heavy. They now are starting inbound engines and doing more content and other things. You're going to have to experiment and see what works, but let the market dictate that, and don't just assume things and change your behavior ahead of reality.
Like what so many of us are doing, I can't tell you how many emails like this I've structured for a sales team or written myself. But you have that like boilerplate line, like, I hope you and yours are doing well. But you're right, like that's almost asking for permission instead of forgiveness, right? And I think especially resonating in the audience here, how important it is to just be positive. I think that's brilliant. Coming up next here, have you seen more or less remote first companies pop up at close? Do you think there will be a permanent shift to remote? Wow.
Yeah, I've been torn on this. I think in the beginning, I was quite negative on this. Like everybody was tweeting, this is going to be the inflection point for remote. And I was like, wait a second. Are forced to go home. Their families and children are at home, and now they have to work from there in maybe very challenging environment. maybe that's not the best way to introduce remote work to people in a way that will make them go, this is what I want for the rest of my life, versus going, I can't wait to get out of here again, right? I can't wait to go back to my normal work setup. Now I'm softening up on this. I'm not as pessimistic anymore, because I do see more evidence that some teams are seeing the benefits of it and some positives. So it's a mixed bag, and I think it really will depend on how long this takes and how good of a job we do as a remote community in welcoming all the newcomers and giving them advice and help, but also realizing that we can't give the boilerplate remote work advice, because working remotely and working from home while your entire family is at home are not the same thing. They're very different, very different environments. So I think if we're not just giving people tools, but try to be very empathetic and finding answers to this difficult environment, I think that many more companies, many more people will find the remote work appealing or see the benefit of it. So I think it is a trend I've always believed in, and I think that I'm an even more believer today than I've ever been before, for sure.
Review consultant, right? That this is an emergency remote work situation. This is not how remote work normally goes. Here's one that's specifically tactical to sales. What about hiring account executives remotely? There's always been this sort of narrative, oh, sales teams can't be remote. Just kind of talk through, through that methodology you utilize.
So you can definitely hire salespeople remotely. There's many companies that do it. We do it. It can be done, right? I always said that sales is kind of the last department that's gonna fully embrace remote, because salespeople are amongst the most social animals, amongst the most kind of want to be in an environment where they rub elbows, see each other, and can get competitive with each other. So salespeople are maybe harder to convince to appreciate the productivity gains from being in an environment where you're on your own, which is something that engineers were the first to see the benefit in, right? Like having a kind of a focused, silent environment with no meetings, no interruptions, nobody screaming at you, nobody making jokes. Salespeople love that. They love being interrupted. They love the jokes. They love the screaming. They love the chaos. But there's so many benefits of working in a distributed fashion, working remotely. So many benefits, and I think that you can hire salespeople remotely for sure. I think that you just have to think about it slightly in an adjusted fashion. Number one, just think about creating or recreating a much more vibrant social culture within those salespeople. Maybe you want to have a daily stand-up that's audio video, right? Maybe you want to have weekly competitions. It can be fun, it can be silly, but salespeople can really thrive on this stuff, right? That might seem silly to more engineering-focused, more rational focused mind. A sales team, when there's some kind of a dumb competition, who gets most people to hang up on them or whatever, any kind of crazy little fun game that has some fun prize can just make salespeople have more fun at work, feel more connected, be more competitive. And then the thing that people shouldn't do, and I've heard a bunch of founders ask me this, don't fall into the trap of thinking it's a crisis, lots of salespeople are going to be laid off. Maybe this is a time to be like, sell 100% on commission, and if you get deals, I'll pay you money. If you don't get deals, you get nothing. But I don't want to talk to you. You just figure it out on your own. It's just not realistic. It's just not going to work out. And the chances that these salespeople are going to do damage in the market and with your reputation and brand are very, very high. Onboard these people, give them a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of attention. Only hire sales reps now if you can tell them something that they can do that you have recently done that can be replicated, right? So if you've been selling through LinkedIn outreach 6 months ago successfully, and now nobody's responding to your LinkedIn outreach anymore, you can't just hire a bunch of salespeople out of that problem and tell them to figure it out. They can't figure it out. Do something today that sort of works, and then you can hire reps and tell them to replicate what you're doing and see if you can generate similar results. So those are just some thoughts to share around like hiring sales reps during this time.
It sounds like replicating the energy of an in-person sales team, utilizing remote tools to do so is what's important to ensuring or supporting a sales team in that way. You really need to replicate that energy.
and overemphasize to the social and fun part and competitive part of it, more so than just the rational information exchange, tasks, to-dos. That's not going to be enough to have a vibrant, successful sales team. You're going to have to do a lot more on the fun, on the social connectivity, on the competitiveness, to keep salespeople truly engaged and make them feel like a successful sales team.
Last question. We have about a minute and a half left. You're a CEO. You're going to have to answer these questions. Plenty. Has work and life changed forever? What are your just sort of personal viewpoints on the social implications of what we're living in right now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't fucking know, just like anybody else. Like, I'm not sure. But if you ask me today, and I have changed, I am adjusting my mind on these things as the world is spinning. Today, I do believe that today, my hypothesis is that we're at the very beginning of this phase is gonna take much longer than we all think. We all kind of think in kind of by movies and storytelling in three parts: the beginning, the middle, the end, right? And I feel like emotionally, a lot of people feel like we're in the middle, so we're like now awaiting the end phase. And I think that this is going to be much more of a marathon than a sprint, and it will have implications that are going to be, there's more surprises in the future. Hopefully no health surprises, maybe economic surprises, maybe political surprises, but there's surprises in our future that will be unexpected, I think, and unintuitive. So I think that this time is going to change us much more long lasting than we can understand. And I don't believe that we're just going to resume into how the world was exactly the way it was in 3 months and 6 months. I think that remembering that it's not the strongest that survive, but the most adaptable is something I try to keep top of my mind. Just be adaptable and you're going to be fine. Just move and change faster as the world is changing and you're going to be fine. So focusing on being very adaptable during this time and very flexible is, I think, going to be the key to it. But I do believe that we're in for a wild ride that's going to last and going to change the world long term.
Thank you so much for your wisdom today. Stay safe, stay inside, stay healthy, and take good care of that family. Steli Efti, the CEO of Close. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.